So hello everyone, I'm Lucy, welcome back to my channel, and today I am so excited to be joined by the lovely Leigh Bardugo.
Thank you for having me.
So Leigh is over here in the UK to celebrate her publication of Six of Crows, which is her new novel. It's the first in a new series, or duology, I think?
Yeah, we've been caught, well, I really don't like the word duology.
I know.
I don't know why it rubs me the wrong way, but maybe there's a store in the US called Anthropology. Do you have that here?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
I love that store.
And I'm always like, I should go shop for like some bath mats at duology.
At duology.
Yeah, so I've been referring to it as a duet.
Well, I'd love to see a range of Six of Crows bath mats at duology, so there you go.
I like it. Finally, a brand tie-in. We'll be rich.
So would you mind describing what Six of Crows is about to those who haven't read it yet?
Six of Crows is a heist story. It's a fantasy heist. We always pitch it as Ocean's 11 meets Game of Thrones, but a lot of people have not seen Ocean's 11, so now we're going with Guardians of the Galaxy, but less space. It's a story about 6 kids, all from different backgrounds, with different prejudices and some different ideas about themselves, who are offered a huge sum of money to break into a fortress that has never been breached before. And if they can pull this off, if they can heist this scientist out of this fortress, they're going to come into a payday that means something very different for each of them. Yeah. Magical heist.
Was it a challenge to kind of, because it's in the Grisha World,
yes,
which was the setting for your first series. Was it difficult to kind of slip into that world, but with a different cast of characters?
No, not really. I mean, I guess I should say too, if you haven't read the trilogy, you can read Six of Crows without having read the trilogy. I built it for people who are new to the series, but I also built in some goodies and shout outs and Easter eggs for people who had read the trilogy. Yeah, I mean, the world for me was always much bigger than the story that got told in the books. Yeah. And the map has always been some place, there are a lot of places I wanted to explore, and I was always wanting to write about Kerch and Ketterdown. It was kind of in the back of my mind. So this was this incredible opportunity to do that. It was difficult because there were so many things to introduce. It's not as if when you're writing in the same world, you can just, assume that your readers know all about it. Yeah. But I also like to throw my readers in. Like, that first chapter, you're going to be like, what? So there's definitely some, not what, but what. And you're going to have to catch up on a lot of the concepts as you go along. But I promise you they're all explained.
So, Six of Crows is told through many people's point of view. I believe there's over 6. Mm-hmm. How was this a challenge, or was this kind of easy for you to slip into, getting into each character's minds?
The hardest part of the process was not the multiple POV. I actually really liked writing a multiple POV, because if I was reading like a really dark backstory or something, I could just switch to another character, and there was always someplace new to go, and it meant I never really got fatigued with one character's POV. And I know some people are wary of multiple POV, but I really tried to not give any given person short shrift. Also, like most multiple POV books, there's different timelines, like they're in different locations, whereas the action just keeps going, like one POV ends and the next one picks up. And I found it like mostly very comfortable, like sort of each character sort of stepped forward to say, all right, I'll pick up the thread, like as we went along. I think the work of getting those voices to be distinctive really happened in revision. That's when I really paid very close attention to the kind of language I used for each character, even like sort of the rhythm of, I guess it's not speech, but their thoughts. Like I always read my books out loud when I'm advising them. The kind of metaphors that they would use, where they're from, the level of education, all of those things kind of played into the way I thought that they would sound to the reader. And I hope that it works well.
Definitely. So I think every character is so distinctive. And possibly one of my favourites, even though all of them were my favourite, let's be honest, Kaz. He is such a brilliant character. So what was your kind of inspiration behind his character?
Kaz began when I was working on the Grisha trilogy. I would write these folk tales, and you can read them for free online. And I had this idea for a character named Dirty Hounds, who would travel from town to town, and he would be kind of an outcast. He would be the guy you went to when you wanted something terrible done, and sort of no deed was too low, and you really didn't want this guy knocking on your door late at night. So I had this idea for a character. I was like, I don't know if he's going to get a story. I don't know if he's going to show up in a book. And when I got the idea for this heist, I was like, of course course, this is where he comes from. He's from Ketterdam. And I started to build this kind of, this kid who had really grown up on the streets. And I think there's a line in it that's something like, you know, he found survival was much easier once he left decency behind.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the core of Kaz's character. And I really didn't want to write a Merry Band of Thieves story. Like, I like those stories, but I find that in a lot of books, criminals are these kind of like, hail fellow well-met jolly criminals, and they all like are like, and then we'll give presents to the orphans at Christmas time. And I'm like, nah, Kaz would steal the presents from the orphans and like maybe burn it down on the way out. So,
So the one quality I love about Kaz is that he always seems to be one step ahead all the time. You could never predict where this whole heist was going. Was that something that you are yourself? Do you think that when you're plotting, did you kind of know where things were going, or did they kind of interweave and make sense at the end?
Well, I knew where the plot was going.
Yeah.
I outlined, and so I knew a lot of the tricks that Kaz was going to use, but also some of them came out of improvisation, like realizing that I'd gotten them into a fix, and then having to figure out how to get them out of it. So some of that occurred in the process of writing, some of it was planned out. And the thing about Kaz is, you know, he appears much smarter because I've had days or weeks to bang my head against the wall and try to figure out the clever thing he's going to do or say. But I also like the idea of somebody who's so sharp he cuts himself. You know, like that's like one of my favorite conventions.
Definitely. Where did the heist storyline come from? Because it's quite a big departure from the Grisha series. Where did that come from?
Yeah, I was driving down the street in Los Angeles and I saw a billboard for a movie called Monuments Men. And it's a movie with George Clooney and Matt Damon. Yeah, did you see it?
I haven't seen it, no.
Yeah, nobody's seen it. Sorry, George. You seem like a really nice fellow. But I didn't want to see it when I saw the billboard, but I thought, oh, you know, I really want to rewatch Ocean's 11. And as soon as I thought that, I was like, magical heist. And I sort of pulled over to the side of the road and I started talking into my cell phone, and I realized, you know, I'd had a bunch of these different characters that were kind of in the back of my head, and I was like, oh, I'm going to bring them all together and force them to work together to survive and hopefully come out of this mission alive. And it was also, I'd really been wanting to write about Ketterdam. I was like, of course, this is, you know, a heist story is perfect for this.
Yeah.
So I think I also, you know, the Grisha trilogy is very much a chosen one story. It's a very classic fantasy arc. And we see a lot of that. And I love those stories, but I really wanted to step away from that. I wanted to tell the story of a group of kids who weren't chosen ones, who didn't have grand destinies, and who weren't secret princes or princesses, and were just trying to survive.
So Leigh, NaNoWriMo is coming up.
Yes.
Which, to everyone who doesn't know what NaNoWriMo is, it's National Novel Writing Month every November. What would be your advice for people who are embarking on this big mission and need to write down their first draft in a month?
Don't think about it as a big mission. Don't think about the big book.
You all.
No, but that's the danger. Don't think about the big picture. Think about what's the first scene I'm going to write. Okay, now if you're a plotter, some people are, some people aren't. You know, then by all means try to plot out like the major beats of the story, or at least what you know before you start. So it's not like you're entering blank on that first day of November. If you are not a plotter, still try to think about like, what's the first scene I'm going to write? You know, and if you start on that morning on November 1st and you find yourself stuck, write about the fact that you're stuck. Just start typing whatever's in your head. I know that this project is about a guy who lives in the forest, but I don't know where the forest is, and I know that this opening scene is supposed to be blah, 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 just to break that paralysis between your head and your fingers. And then just have it be about, you know, every day, try to get those 1,500 words out. If you can, do it in the morning before you've even logged onto your email or social media. You know, spend all that stuff, it can actually wait. There's nothing that's going to be so urgent that it won't wait. And if it is, they'll call you.
Yeah.
You know, and so try to get those out of the way, because then you feel like a conquering hero the rest of the day.
Exactly.
And if you can't do that, if you work at the end of the day, then really dedicate yourself to it. Treat writing as a job before you get paid for it.
So what does an average writing day look like for you? I love these questions. I'm just so nosy. Yeah, I am. I'm like...
What does it look like for you?
Well, it's kind of like, oh, today I've not done any writing, and today I've done no writing. But one day, It's always a one-day thing, so.
Yeah. It depends on the book, and it depends on where I am in the draft. For instance, I will be working on the first revision of Six of Crows when I get home. The drafting process, I've had a lot of promotion, a lot of travel this year, so I was really kind of down to the wire in getting that first draft out, but I knew I wanted to get something to my editor because I knew I needed to take time away from it and kind of step back from the process, and there was no escaping the terrible first draft. So I wrote a terrible first draft, and when I get home, what I will probably do is I'll try to make a lot of writing dates with people because I really do like to write with other writers, and I will sit down with my editorial letter from my editor and with my notes on that letter, and I'll start to attack the story. I usually spend, I try to work early in the day, again, like before I've gotten on social media, and I feel like I can take a little step back from social media since I'm coming back from tours, since launch is over, and sort of dig into that. I'll work for a few hours, up until lunch, and then, have a snack, hopefully talk about plot with somebody, or walk around my house, take my dog for a walk, and then go back to work. Sometimes it's for a few hours, sometimes it's for the entire day. I don't work by word count. I work by sequence, especially on revision. I'll be thinking about, okay, I need to go into these scenes, or I have to solve this problem. I really hate watching word count when I'm working. I try to turn off that function.
Yeah. So what's next for you? Where do you find yourself going in terms of your writing?
Well, first is tackling the sequel, getting it where I want to be. And then I actually have a couple of projects coming up, but I can't talk about them yet.
Totally fine.
I'm
wait.
definitely going to be exploring some new territory outside of the Grishaverse. And I said that at an event the other night. People were like, boo!
No, we don't want that.
But that's the thing is that I found with the trilogy, before Six of Crows came out, everybody was like, no, I want more stories about the Darkling, or I want more stories about Nikolai. And now I hope people are like, okay, actually, we liked these characters. So I'm hoping that they'll have a little more faith in me on the next stuff, too. Oh, and I have a short story that's coming out in Stephanie Perkins' new anthology. She did My True Love Gave to Me for the holidays, and we're doing a summer anthology. And so I have a short story in there, and it was really fun to write. It has nothing to do with the Grisha World, but there is magic, and very different, but very fun. And it was fun to write a love story. Just a straight up love story.
I can't wait to read it. So you've got a cast of characters here who are all so very different and very diverse and all brilliant. What would happen if you put these characters into the Grisha series? Who do you think would get on best with Alina and Mal and the Darkling?
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, I think that Matthias and Mal would be able to have a talk because they're both soldiers. I think they're both soldiers who are attracted to strong women. I feel like, Nina is sort of already in that world. So, I think she would have some power struggles with Zoya, and she'd get along with Genya, and look, Kaz doesn't get on with anybody, so Kaz would probably just rob them all. Remember that orphanage I mentioned? Probably steal.
That'd be that.
probably steal everything in their cupboards. As for the Darkling, I think he would see them all as resources. I think the Darkling would be pretty impressed with my little crew, and I think he would have some very specific ideas about how to cultivate the talents of some of them.
And what 3 fantasy books would you recommend that you've read recently?
I would recommend anything by Frances Harding. She writes middle grade, but it can skew older. The language is really beautiful, and I think it's great for adults as well. I would recommend The Shadow Hero, a graphic novel by Jean Yang. Absolutely love it. Even if you think you don't like comics, you should pick it up. You will like this. And then if you like it, you can read Boxers and Saints and American Born Chinese, which are both kind of more weighty, but are totally fantastic. And I'm going to say, Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones is one of my favorite books of all time, and I am always distressed to find out that people haven't read it. I'm like, you must read it. Or the audiobook is totally wonderful too. A lot of people see the movie, and the movie is wonderful, but it is completely different. It's wonderful in a completely different way.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I wish more people would pick it up, and whenever people are like, I'm looking for the next Harry Potter, I'm like, yo, just read Diana and Joan.
Well, thank you so much for being on my channel today, and everyone needs to pick up Six of Crows. It's out now and it's completely brilliant.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!